Hey everyone, I am here with Alain Hunkins. We had a great conversation on the podcast. I'm super excited to have him here. He is a sought after leadership speaker, consultant, trainer, and coach. And he's got a new book that just dropped a couple of months ago at the time of this recording. It's called Cracking the Leadership Code: 3 Secrets to Building Strong Leaders. Definitely check out his book. He's worked with some huge companies and done a lot he's a true leadership expert in every sense of the word. What's up, Alain?
Hey, Mario. It is so good to be back with you again. I'm really enjoying our conversations.
I'm glad. I am too. We had so much fun. I didn't expect it to go in certain directions that it did when we did the podcast, but I'm glad it did because I think both 10-minute segments that we did were just packed a pretty strong wallop.
Deep thoughts, I would say. We had some seriously deep thoughts going on there.
Yeah. And I like that you mentioned that because one of the things that I'll tell people that happens quite often to me is I talk to a lot of other podcasters, right?
Yeah.
And one of the things that after learning about what each of us does, one of the backhanded compliments that I get quite often is, well, that's great. You only do 10 minutes, but I like to go deep with my guests. So I like to go an hour, hour and a half. And I always say, okay, that's great. You know, you do your thing, I do mine. But then afterwards, I'll go back and listen to their episodes just to see what
Yeah.
they're talking about. And what I often find is they didn't go any deeper than I did. They just
Yeah.
had a lot of the fluff. At the beginning, it's like, oh, how's the weather where you are? What'd you have for breakfast? What's going on in your
Yeah.
life? And it's like, that's great because you have to create rapport with someone when you're having a conversation, but it
Yeah.
doesn't necessarily have to be something the audience participates in.
You bring up the great quantity versus quality conundrum, right? Just because there's more doesn't mean it's better. So, yeah,
That's
we
right.
can do a lot in just a little while.
And that was difficult for me. And I'll be honest, the reason I started with 10 minutes when I first started this whole thing is because, number one, it was a challenge for me and I wanted to grow because I'm a talker and I like to talk to people and I'll go longer. But the other thing I noticed was, and I knew that my ideal listener doesn't have a lot of time. They need to consume fast. And I wanted to give them that feeling of achievement from starting something and finishing it in one sitting. But the third thing was I would set a lot of meetings like back in the day before all this Zoom and digital stuff. I would have meetings all day long. So I'd post up at Starbucks or coffee shop and schedule out my day, and people would just filter in and out, and we'd have these meetings, right?
Yeah.
And what I noticed was we would schedule them for like a half an hour, but if one meeting went 45 minutes to an hour, it would throw off the rest of the day. And
Yeah.
I was going long. So then I started this habit of setting meetings for way shorter than I thought I needed so
Yeah.
that it kind of created some urgency on both sides. And it seemed
Yeah.
to work out a little bit better because if we know we have an hour or we know we have 10 minutes, I believe that if our intentions are aligned, we'll cover what's important and get to the heart of it to fit the time slot.
Totally. I mean, what you're talking about is actually a principle that is very useful when I coach leaders. We talk about the importance of setting constraints. The fact is, everything will expand to the constraints that you give it. And by giving yourself some really tight constraints, you might actually end up producing much better work. I mean, any author will tell you the thing they hate the most is staring at a blank page, right? Or a painter looking at a blank canvas because too many choices. We get overwhelmed by, I could do this, I could do that, I could do this. When in fact, if we have a structure and we have a process in place, then we can fill it in. Then we can go into it, which is why, as we talk on the podcast, the importance of planning your day and having rituals so you're not having to wake up and going, what do I feel like focusing on today? I don't really know. So, really having that intention and constraints give you freedom. I know that sounds paradoxical, but actually, the structure and the discipline of the constraint allows you to free up and do your work instead of thinking about doing your work.
That's that's another paradoxical thing about thinking about doing the work. There's a lot of people that I notice, and quite frankly, a lot of the services we provide as a company with the company that I operate, it's because what I noticed was when people would find fear around something, or when they just didn't look forward to it, or when they just didn't quite know where to start instead of just starting, they
Yeah.
would do other things that are more comfortable but less important to fill that time. And then they would, at the end of the day, go, oh, I was so busy today. But
Yeah.
my question would be, well, you were busy, but were you productive?
Totally. Totally. I mean, what you're saying, the fact is, you just named what is the primary motivator in human behavior, which is basically we do what we do to avoid discomfort, right? And so people will go off and distract themselves, procrastinate if it just avoids having to do sitting with something that creates an uncomfortable feeling inside. So being able to focus on that is so important.
And I think that's where the distinction comes in between, because another thing that I preach about a lot or I talk about a lot is, you know, there's so much information in the world today, right? You can open your phone at any time. You can hop onto Google at any time and pretty much find anything you want about anything you want. For example, when I go to Facebook, I could spend 5 minutes on Facebook right now. And if I just scrolled my feed, I guarantee you I could find no less than 5 different ways to lose weight. I mean, people will
Hmm.
be posting about different diets, different exercises, different foods they like to eat, different products they're using. It's everywhere. But my
Yeah.
question is, if that's the case, then why aren't more people at their ideal weight? If information is that readily available, because there's a difference between information and transformation, and the difference is application. And so
Yeah.
I think that, as a leader, it's our job as leaders to help people apply things to get the
Yeah.
transformative results or the outcomes that they're looking for. I mean, we
Yeah.
can flood ourselves with information all day long, but if we never apply the information, what good is it?
Totally. I mean, what you're touching on, you call it information and transformation. I call it the difference between acquiring knowledge and acquiring wisdom, right? So a lot of people are just consumers of knowledge. I'm going to consume this, consume, because I think if I get more knowledge, in fact, that is a great, by the way, it's a great distraction because it makes you feel like you're doing something really important instead of actually getting to working on your business. But I'm learning, I'm doing research, who is, what, let me read this article. Let me read what, you know, let's read what Gary Vee is up to. Let's watch his podcast. So then I can think I'm actually listening when actually what you need to do is make those calls, write those emails to people, to potential clients or clients. So it's so important for us to be able to focus on what is important. And that's wisdom. That's applied knowledge. And it's hard for people because we have all these beliefs that get in our way, like we said about discomfort.
Now, I'm aware of Gary Vee. I've consumed some of his content, but I'm not like an ardent disciple, I would say. But one thing I will say about him, since you brought him up, is that in
Hmm.
in this context of this topic, is that one of the things I've heard him say in the past is he actively tells people to stop consuming his content and go out and do stuff. So that I can connect with, and I agree because I've never really heard other quote unquote, I'll say, gurus
Yeah.
do that type of thing where they're like, stop listening to me and go do what I'm saying. So I respect that a lot.
Yeah, it's so interesting. So I started my professional leadership work doing hands-on training in training rooms and coaching with people. And it's funny because now on the back end here, I've written this book. And honestly, a book as a modality is about the least impactful way for someone to make behavior change because you don't have the face-to-face, you don't have the accountability, you don't have the group process. And yet it's important. It's a tool, and it's amazing to me is how many people out here in kind of any area of personal professional development are kind of going, buy this, this will change your life. No, actually, none of this will change your life. You will change your life when you're ready to, and when it's time that you decide that your life needs a change. And then when you're ready, there are a lot of tools that can help you. But don't think that somebody or something out there is going to change it for you.
Really quickly, talk to me about accountability because you mentioned accountability and it's something that's been coming up in other conversations I've been having lately. It's like the importance of accountability. How important is it and what function does it play in you actually achieving outcomes that you desire?
Sure. So for me, where accountability starts and ends is with yourself. And ultimately, if you think about where does the word accountability come from? It comes from accounting, right? So you're familiar with the balance sheet, obviously, Mario, right? So think about a balance sheet. I'm drawing that little line down the middle. On the one side, you've got assets. On the other side, you have liabilities. And obviously, you want your accounts to be in account. That is to balance. Both sides have to net out at zero, right at the end. They're equal. Well, that's the world of accounting. If we take that into the world of personal development or leadership development, one side of the ledger is what I say I'm going to do. The other side is what did I actually do? Now, for the two sides to be an account, I have to do what I say I'm going to do. And so for me, all of the blame and the shame and the guilt around holding people accountable, it's totally optional. The fact is, just take a step back and say, did you do what you say you're going to do? And so for me, if I'm your leader, it's not my job to hold you accountable, Mario. It's my job is for us to co-create. What are you committing to? What promises are you making? And then what promises did you keep? And then along the way, you can check in with me. I can support you on the journey and I can celebrate when you're done. And if you're having problems, I can suggest some things that you can do to hold yourself in better account and achieve what you said you're going to do. So to me, it's actually it should be that clinical. It should be that scientific. And I think too many people get too involved and all of the emotional undercurrents around accountability. And that will help you go a long way if you
I
just can
really
keep it that simple.
I really love the way you explained that because all too often I'll hear people who say like I have to check in with my accountability buddy, and it's like it becomes this once a week or twice a week thing where they're on the phone for 30 minutes and they're like, what did you do today? What did you do today? Okay, go do better next time. And then that's it. And it's like, did that really what did that really do?
Yeah, I mean, it can work. I mean, there's certain thing about, I mean, there's been science that's shown that when you publicly declare your commitments to somebody else and they follow up with you, that you're more likely to show up because you're basically don't want to let somebody else down, but you'll let yourself down. So there is some truth to that. That's really, really valuable. I think where the real value in the accountability buddy process is if you can get a buddy who's also a really good peer coach. So if you don't follow through, let's say I say to you, to use your kind of weight loss example or health example from before, I say, okay, so I said I'm going to go to the gym 3 times this week. So did I go? No, I went once. So if you're good, then you could say things. So Alain, what did you choose to do instead the other 2 days? And actually, we can take a look at me starting to learn about my own discomfort. Maybe it was, oh, my boss said I had this important project and I didn't want to let my boss down, right? So suddenly I can see where my real values are, or I'm scared to speak up and set boundaries. See, there's huge value to me in understanding the deeper motivations of my behavior. So that's where the accountability buddy really rises up, but that does take a little bit more skill.
Yeah. So
But
if you're gonna
yeah, even just sharing just the basics, I'm going to do this, and then checking in. There's some value in that. The science would say
so if you're gonna find an accountability buddy, find one that wants to go a little deeper.
exactly like your podcast.
That's right. Do it fast, do it deep, and it'll get
Exactly,
you what you want. Alana, thank you
exactly.
so much for being here. I appreciate everything on the podcast. If you're watching this video, then the podcast is coming soon. If you're watching this on social media as it's been released, if you're listening to this on the podcast, then go back to the podcast and listen to the episodes that Alana and I did. They were fantastic conversations. And grab a copy of his book, Cracking the Leadership Code: 3 Secrets to Building Strong Leaders. You can grab that at his website, alainhunkins.com, or wherever you get your books. So do that. Alain, thank you again. I appreciate everything, and let's do this again real soon.
I'd love to, Mary. It's been a real pleasure. It's been fast and deep. Thank you. Okay, thanks.